This here is the Canon G7X Mark II. This was a really popular camera among vloggers and content creators back in early 2016 when it first came out. But is this camera still worth buying today? So this is not a review video. I won't be touching on all the specs for this camera, but I will go over some that I feel is very important for you to know. The first thing that I really like about this camera is the flip over LCD screen that is also touchscreen. It can shoot in 1080p 60 frames per second, which means that you can slow it down nice and smooth and get that really nice slow motion. It also has a built-in ND filter so that when you're shooting outside, your shots won't look overexposed and they'll still look kind of cinematic. It has a focal range between 24mm and 100mm and apertures between f1.8 and 2.8. But what does that all mean? It just means that you'll be able to get some really good quality videos out of this little point-and-shoot camera. The one thing that it is lacking is 4K capabilities. So you're kind of stuck at 1080p. But to be honest, I'm shooting this video in 1080p still. And the type of short form content that you're seeing posted right now, a lot of it's still in 1080p. As long as the quality is not super horrible and grainy, unless that's the style you're going for, then you should be all right using this for the type of stuff you're shooting. But it might matter though if you are using this to shoot, say, a spec commercial for a company or brand. But that's what we're here to do today. We're gonna test all this out and see how well it does. And since I'm already here at the office, we're gonna start off with testing this camera out, shooting some products. We'll use this Google Pixel Ball as the product for today. So we're gonna shoot this in 60 frames per second, 1080p. All right, so what I'll do is I'll shoot this ball here with this Canon G7X. I'll also do it with my smartphone and my Sony a7S III. The iPhone 13 Pro Max and the Sony a7S III are the two cameras that I shoot content with the most. But I think it's just fair to compare it to those two cameras. Now I'm going to shoot it with my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm going to leave it at 4K 60 frames per second because that's usually what I shoot my content in. I know it might not be fair to shoot the G7X in 1080p 60 frames per second, but that's the highest it can go, comparing it to the iPhone, which can go to 4K. But we just need to compare it and see how well it does. Now we're going to use the Sony a7S III with a 24 to 70mm lens. So again, for this one, I'm going to be shooting it in 4K 60 frames per second. Before I go out and shoot with this camera here, let's take a couple story-like videos with this, like what I would do if I had to post on Instagram. So today I'm testing out the G7X to see if it's still worth buying in 2023. Now we're going to compare that to the front-facing camera on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Most of the time I would do it on my phone, but let's just see how it does. All right, so the next thing I want to do is get some shots outside with this, the iPhone and the Sony a7S III. Once we're done shooting everything, we're going to come sit down, watch all the footage together. Then maybe we can decide if it's still worth buying in 2023. We are here at the park. Is this a park? We're going to shoot the exact same shots using all three devices. Since it's bright out, I'm going to turn on the ND filter on the Canon G7X. So now I can film in bright situations and have it look cinematic still. Testing out the Canon G7X Mark II. We're here outside. I just want to test out to see how the audio is right now on this camera. It's a little windy today, so the audio might be a little bit muffled. So since this is a compact camera, you got to be really slow with your movement. If you're planning to do some pans, I suggest using it with two hands, locking your shoulders in and slowly panning. It's a small camera, little movement, make it more jittery compared to these other ones here like the Sony a7S III and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. They have some built-in stabilization, so it helps with all that jittery movement. But the Canon G7X, you'll notice all that if you're not careful. So just be careful with how you film. Make sure that your shots and movements are a little bit slower than how you would film with these other two. All right, so we are back from shooting outside. I've loaded up the files onto my computer and we're just gonna compare. Okay, so we'll start with the Sony G7X footage here. And this is unedited. I haven't touched it or anything. This is raw, straight from the camera. It looks pretty good. Doesn't look as grainy as I thought it would be, but I guess with the proper lighting, yeah, it turned out pretty good. It honestly didn't look as cinematic as the G7X, so I'll probably give it to the G7X on that one. Then the Sony a7S III, of course, you can see the shallow depth of field there, and I think obviously you can't compare. But I think the G7X did pretty good in terms of quality when it comes to shooting the product indoors. So today I'm testing out the G7X to see if it's still worth buying in 2023. Now let's go into a little area here with low light. I am shooting in auto right now. As you can see, it's changing my exposure as I am moving around. Well, it's not too bad. It's a little shaky, so I guess that's the advantage of using your iPhone and the A7S III. It has built-in stabilization. It does help out a lot. You can see how shaky it was without it. And now we're gonna go overkill with the Sony A7S III, which I would do this sometimes too, depending on what I'm shooting. Most of the time I would do it on my phone. Now we're gonna compare that to the front-facing camera on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. This is what I would usually do if I had to post a story. So the G7X footage was a little bit more grainy in this one. Since I was moving around, I didn't have proper lighting on me. I think maybe if I did have better lighting, footage would have came out a little bit better. Now let's go over some park footage. Okay, so these are all the G7X park footage that we got earlier today. So overall, after watching all the park footage, obviously the A7S III is a lot sharper, a lot smoother, but the G7X it didn't do as bad as I thought it would. The built-in ND filter definitely helped out a lot with capturing the footage with the G7X. And I think with a little bit of color grading, some stabilization in post, you'll be able to fix a lot of these footage that we shot with the G7X. Definitely make it usable for something we can post up online. Hey guys, so testing out the Canon G7X Mark II. Guys, I am now vlogging on the Sony A7S III. And the one I'm used to the most is the iPhone 13 Pro Max here. Pretty sure how this one's gonna turn out. Compare. So I think vlogging with all three, if I had to use something to create a story with or a quick vlog type story, probably just use my iPhone. So I played around with the clips a little bit more. I put them side by side, color graded it, add some slow motion. And after watching it, in a lot of the clips, the G7X was actually able to kind of keep up with it. With the iPhone shots, you don't get a lot of depth of field unless you use cinematic mode, and that will also depend on the type of iPhone you have. With the G7X, it does have a slightly shallow depth of field, so you can kind of see a little bit of that in the shots compared to the Sony A7S III. You can't compare it. You can't compare the two, and I think it's fair not to compare it to the Sony A7S III. I think the main thing I was trying to do here is to see if it was able to produce something that is respectable and something that you can use and actually post up on your socials today. If you are looking for a G7X Mark II and you can get it for a good price, I say go for it. I think the iPhone out of all three of them is most convenient because it's in your pocket already and you can just take it out and it takes decent videos and photos. Now, if we're talking about filming product stuff in studio, I think the Sony A7S III is way ahead of both of them. But as you can see in the footage that I was showing you earlier, the G7X actually did pretty good. There's a lot of other things too that you can take advantage on the G7X that's pretty cool. It has a focal length of 24mm to 100mm. So if you wanted to shoot something a bit wider, you have that option. If you want to zoom in and still maintain that nice crisp look, you have the option to go to 100mm and it still looks pretty good. So would I buy this camera again today? The answer is yes, only if I can get it for a cheaper price. I believe when I first got this, it was roughly around $900 Canadian. Not sure how much it is now, but if you can get a deal on it, even used, like I said, I think it'd be a good little backup camera to have on your vacation. This is definitely a really good option. Let me know what you guys think though, based on what you guys seen in this video. Would you guys buy this camera today? If you like this video here, make sure to watch this other G7X video where I show you how to shoot cinematic stuff with the G7X.